The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. A leper came to Jesus and kneeling down begged him and said, "If you wish, you can make me clean." Moved with pity, he stretched out his hand, touched him, and said to him, "I do will it, be made clean." The leprosy left him immediately, and he was made clean. Then warning him sternly, he dismissed him at once. He said to him, "See that you tell no one anything, but go, show yourself to the priest, and offer for your cleansing what Moses prescribed. That will be proof for them." The man went away and began to publicize the whole matter. He spread the report abroad, so that it was impossible for Jesus to enter a town openly. He remained outside in deserted places, and people kept coming to him from everywhere. The Gospel of the Lord. We have a young man who works for our parish doing maintenance part-time. And I say part-time because he loves to travel. He's always traveling. Last year he was in Hawaii, and last week he said, "I'm going to Hawaii again because I got to go see more of the islands." And when I found out he was going to the island of Molokai, I got all excited. And I said, "Are you going to go visit the shrine of St. Damien of Molokai?" St. Damien is the priest from Belgium who traveled halfway around the world to care for the lepers in Hawaii who were isolated on the island of Molokai when no one else would take care of them. He lived with them for 16 years. He got leprosy himself eventually and died of the disease. But anyways, the young man says to me, "No, I'm not going to where St. Damien lived. Ever since COVID, that area of Molokai has been closed off to tourists, and you need permission from the Hawaii Department of Health to go there." And at first I thought, well, that kind of seems like overkill. I mean, most of those COVID guidelines have fallen by the wayside at this point, and I know COVID is serious, but I'm not sure it's exactly like leprosy. But then I understood the situation better. It turns out that there is actually a small community of lepers left on Molokai. There are about 10 elderly people who have Hansen's disease, have leprosy, and they have a severely weakened immune system. And so they can't just have tourists showing up to their village. All it would take is one illness to wipe the community out. So I told the young man who works for us, well, at least go to the State House in Honolulu, and right in front of the State House in the center of the plaza is the statue of St. Damien, because he really is the state hero of Hawaii. Today is the World Day for the Sick, and we know that sickness, illness is part of human life. It always has been. Every society throughout history has had to have laws and restrictions to try to prevent the spread of disease. And we get a little glimpse of that today in our reading from Leviticus, where the Jewish people had all these laws about how to prevent the spread of leprosy. And we just get like this little snippet of it today, but I read the whole chapter 13 of Leviticus, and I started laughing because it wasn't a job anymore. But of course, if you was determined you did have leprosy, then you were isolated completely. You were made to live outside the community, to get close to no one. If you got within 10 feet of someone, you had to shout out, "Unclean, unclean." Now, on one level, I mean, this law makes perfect sense. I mean, leprosy is just this awful disease. It's highly contagious. It begins to eat away at your flesh. You can become severely disfigured with it. And so it made sense to try to prevent the spread of the disease. But still, there's something that doesn't quite sit right with us about that law. There seems to be something missing. You know, even with COVID, we kind of figured out that preventing disease is not the only human good. There are many other human goods that we need to consider as well. And maybe what's missing from these laws is what Jesus taught us, that every human being, no matter how sick or weak they may be, no matter how trapped they may be in sin or addiction, no matter how unwanted they may be by society, every human being is made in the image and likeness of God. They are a son or daughter of God to be cherished and loved and protected. And so how does Jesus treat a leper? Well, he reaches out his hand and he touches the leper and says, "Be made clean." And you can understand the popularity of Jesus. Isn't that what we all want? We want to be respected and have our dignity respected and feel part of a community, to feel part of belonging to God. And that's what Jesus was doing for people. So he became so popular, he couldn't even enter a town openly. And we might say, Jesus, you're being a little bit reckless here. I mean, it's great you're being compassionate to this leper, but you're putting the health of the whole community in danger. But of course, Jesus knew he could heal leprosy, so he wasn't actually putting anyone in danger. And he doesn't ignore the law. He says, go show yourself to the priest. I can heal you, but the priest, he's the one that can restore you to the community. And that's what I want for you. I want more than just your physical healing. I want the good of all of you. I want you to have life and have it to the full. So go to the priest. He'll help restore you to the whole community, the worshiping community of Israel. And that's what Jesus says to us. When we go to him in our sins, when we go to him in our pain, we need healing, we need forgiveness. We should go to Jesus, and he heals us. He gives us a new heart, a clean heart, a heart for worship. But then he usually says, go show yourself to the priest in the sacrament of reconciliation. He's the one that can restore you to the community of the church. But Jesus is the one in that sacrament who reaches out his healing hand to us. Anyways, go to the priest. The priest will determine. It made sense, you needed someone official to kind of determine whether you were sick or not. If everyone could just determine for themselves whether they were sick, well, it'd be too easy to kind of to circumvent the rules there a little bit. A lot like the employees at a certain company who were always calling in sick, even when they weren't sick. And the manager began to suspect this a little bit. And finally, he called all the employees together one day for a meeting because he had proof. He said, look, here in the newspaper this morning, right in the sports section, one of our employees who called in sick yesterday, he won the local golf tournament yesterday. Wow, said one man in the back. Imagine the score he could have gotten if he wasn't sick. Speaking of laws and regulations that every society needs to figure out how do we care for the sick, there's a bill being considered in the New Hampshire legislature right now that would allow for physician-assisted suicide for those who have a terminal disease. And there was some information about that in the bulletin last week. Our bishop has been out in front kind of opposing that legislation, along with a lot of suicide prevention groups and people who advocate for the sick and for the disabled, because we realize that's just not what we believe about taking care of the sick. And I think there's a lot of confusion around this issue. We understand, the church understands, people get sick. And sometimes you get to the point where you've done all you can for that person. The person is dying, and it's okay to let them go. We don't teach that you have to keep a person alive indefinitely. After you've given them ordinary care and treatment, you've taken care of their physical needs, but also their spiritual needs. We hope that a person gets a chance to say goodbye to loved ones, to receive the last sacraments of the church, but they're dying. It's okay to let them go. It's okay to let them go home to God, to heaven, eternal life. That's what we believe in. That's a good thing. And the church even says, we can give medicine to people in those situations. Medicine like morphine that might slightly shorten their lifespan, but you're weighing that against the proportionality are you helping them to have be more at peace as they pass away, to be less in pain. And thank goodness for palliative care today that can manage pain and discomfort of someone who is dying. And I think a lot of Catholics get worried about this. I took care of my dying parent. I took care of my dying spouse. Did I do the right thing? But I find in almost all cases you should be at peace, because I think people just do this naturally. They take care of the people that they love. It's not that complicated. So be at peace about that. If you have a question, you could always, bring it to a priest in confession and talk about it. But be at peace. We take care of the people that we love. But the church also teaches, you can't do something active to end the life of their life, and even their suffering has a value before God. And so we have to be very careful not to normalize suicide or to suggest that a person who is sick is a burden on their family or a burden on the medical system as a whole. A sick person is not a burden. They're a gift given to us by God, and we love them, we care for them, and the whole community needs to care for them. We all need community. Even St. Damien realized that when he went to Hawaii. He realized, I need people to help me here. I'm not just going to show up to Hawaii and live isolated among the lepers. What good would that do? That's what was happening before St. Damien. All the lepers were living in isolated huts on the beach. They would often attack one another and steal food from one another. It was survival of the fittest because no one was taking care of them. And then St. Damien showed up, and he began to build up the community. He actually established laws to punish stealing and assault and other crimes. And he built up hospitals and schools and hospice homes to take care of the lepers. And he said, I can't do this all by myself. So he brought other people to come with him. St. Mary Ann Cope was a German nun who had already established one of the first 10 general hospitals in the United States in Syracuse, New York. She went out with 6 of her sisters to Hawaii to help Father Damien establish a hospital there. There's a gentleman named Joseph Dutton from Stowe, Vermont. He was a Civil War veteran. He became a Catholic. He went through RCIA when he was 40 years old. And he said, I got to make up for my wild life here as a youth. So he studied medicine, and he went out and spent 45 years with the lepers in Hawaii and died in 1931. If you ever go skiing there, because it was built on the Dutton family farm, and outside a local artist has drawn pictures of all of the life, scenes from the life of Joseph Dutton. There are countless stories like this of Christians over the centuries caring for the sick in heroic ways and in very intelligent ways. Again, they didn't just show up to Hawaii and realize, okay, I'm in the way here, I'm a tourist. No, they actually thought through things and said, how can I use my gifts with the gifts of others to build up something of lasting value that's really going to help people? And we can be very proud as Christians that we have a great legacy of doing that. You know, we take for granted that we have hospitals and nursing homes and homeless shelters and hospice homes and soup kitchens and food pantries, and those things exist in our society because people believed in those things and took a lot of effort, took a lot of hard work and dedication to build those things up. And it's not clear that if we don't have the teachings and example of Jesus, that we'll have the motivation to keep those things going, or that we'll even value taking care of the poor and the sick and the weak in our society. Not every society does. When the Romans, before Christianity, they often would not take care of the sick. They would leave the sick and the elderly and unwanted infants on the street. And it was the Christians that would pick them up and say, we're going to care for these people. We're going to care for all God's children. These people have a dignity, and people, it made all the difference. The Romans saw that and say, these Christians, they live differently. See how they love one another. See how they love everybody.